Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of sometimes challenging, often surprising source material and deliver the fundamental insights you need to be truly well-informed.
And today we're tackling maybe the biggest question there is.
I think you might be right. We're trying to map the true scope of reality itself.
It's a huge investigation,
Yeah.
into the very nature of existence. And our whole deep dive today is framed by, well, a pretty simple but cosmologically profound contemplation of the phrase Allahu Akbar.
God is greater.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And this isn't just, a religious statement in a vacuum. It's a statement about scale. Our source material posits that the reality defined by modern science, everything we can measure, test, and observe, is just a tiny, tiny fraction of a much larger reality.
A reality that's unseen and sequential.
That's the key.
That immediately flips the table on our whole accepted view of the universe, doesn't it? I mean, we're not just talking about some potential multiverse theory or, undiscovered galaxies.
No, it's more fundamental than that. The claim is that the entirety of space, time, matter, and energy that we can even conceive of is conceptually like a single grain of sand on an infinite beach.
Wow.
And our standard modern view of reality, the one we all learn in school, is essentially built on what's quantifiable.
Right. Time, the three spatial dimensions, energy, matter.
All their interactions, the law that govern them. And even when modern thought admits non-material things, like, say, gravitational fields or fundamental laws.
There's still an expectation behind it.
Yes, the expectation is always that these phenomena can ultimately be described, contained, and maybe even predicted by mathematics and physics.
Which brings us to the big sticking point, consciousness. Modernity wants to explain it, but it really struggles to define it outside of purely material terms, doesn't it?
It does. And the sources we're looking at, they acknowledge this. They say, look, the sciences, especially the humanities, when they try to be universal, they do include consciousness in their definition of reality.
And there's a catch.
There's a big catch. They kind of leave the door open, hoping, or maybe assuming, that eventually mathematics and physics will have the final answer, that consciousness will be reduced to computable data or to some emergent property of brain chemistry.
So the goal is always to fit this spiritual, the internal, the self, into that quantifiable material framework.
Always.
So if we step back and look at this incredible four-dimensional space-time we live in, with all its complexity and all its detail, the source material just says, hold on a second. That whole magnificent structure is small potatoes.
That is the absolute core mission of this deep dive. We first have to really get our heads around the scale and complexity of the known, measurable universe, this modern reality, before we can even begin to appreciate what the sources claim lies beyond it.
We have to build it up just to see it get dwarfed.
Precisely. It requires us to acknowledge the overwhelming detail modern science has uncovered, only to then show that this entire system is functionally and fundamentally incomplete.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to start by understanding just how big that modern reality is before we can see what lies beyond it. And our sources, they give us this just stunningly detailed list.
It's a 50-point list, a comprehensive catalog of everything modern knowledge tries to define, measure, and study. It's a journey across every imaginable scale.
It really is an impressive feat of just cataloging human knowledge.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's deliberate in how it scales from the smallest possible concept right up to the entire known cosmos. It's meant to demonstrate the scope and, the ambition of material science. So let's walk through it.
Let's do it. We have to start at the absolute bottom, right? Where reality is almost more theoretical than physical. We're talking the subatomic and quantum scale, points 1 through 7.
And we start with the Planck length. Now, for you listening, this isn't just small. It is the theoretical minimum length. It's the scale below which our very concepts of space and time as we know them, they just break down.
It's almost impossible to comprehend how tiny that is.
It is, but it defines the very edge of our theoretical framework. It's the first pixel of reality, if you like.
That's a good way to put it. Okay, so that sets the foundation. From there, we start building up in complexity.
Immediately, we move right into the core components of matter. Quarks, and this intrinsic property called spin, which is a fundamental quantized form of angular momentum that defines how particles behave.
And then we get to the things we might remember from high school chemistry class. The electron, or as the source puts it, the electron in whole, the electron shell.
Then the atomic nucleus, the atom kern, which is made of protons and neutrons. And all of that finally culminates in the atom itself. This is the bedrock of all chemistry, all matter as we experience it.
Okay, so we've built an atom, But what I find so fascinating here in how the source material arranges this is that it immediately jumps from these tiny building blocks to something cosmically huge.
Right, to primordial black holes. That's point 7.
It feels like a huge leap. Why link the micro and the macro so early on?
I think it's a very deliberate move. It's meant to show how modern thought is always trying to unify existence. Primordial black holes are these theoretical things that could have emerged from the earliest moments of the universe
So they connect the birth of the cosmos.
and its largest destructive forces directly to the creation of the smallest fundamental bits of matter. It demonstrates the ambition of physics to create a single, unified map of everything, a grand, unified theory.
Okay. So from that unified map, we take another enormous conceptual leap. We jump from physics and chemistry into the self-organizing complexity of life. This is points 8 through 14. This is where inanimate matter starts to arrange itself into living systems.
And the jump is radical. It really is. It starts with the molecule, the complex arrangement of atoms that you need for life to even be possible. From there, the organelle or the organelle.
The specialized little machines inside a cell.
Exactly. The functional components. And this is a critical step because it marks the first layer of truly specialized functional organization within a living system.
And the scaling continues from there very systematically. You have the cell itself, the basic unit of life, which then organizes into Zellgewebe, or tissue.
Which in turn forms an organ. And then finally you get the integrated organ system.
A circulatory system, a nervous system.
All of it. And this entire progression culminates in point 14, the organismus individuum, the single living creature.
And you said this point is crucial. Why?
Because it's the boundary line. It's the boundary of the isolated material entity. Everything up to this point is about internal structure and function, how to build one living thing.
So we've built a physical organism, but of course that organism doesn't exist in a vacuum. Right after the individual, this list just explodes outwards. It moves into ecological and terrestrial scales, points 15 all the way to 39.
This is where the individual has to interact with its environment and with other individuals.
It's a total change in perspective.
It is. We expand from the single individual to groups, the population, then the biozonos, which is a biological community of different populations interacting with each other.
Like a coral reef or a forest.
A perfect example. From there to the ecosystem, that's the environment plus the community, and then finally to the biosphere, which is the total sum of all life and all environments on the entire planet.
And this section of the list feels so exhaustive. It's almost like a detailed geological survey of the planet. It's a massive inventory of Earth itself, and it just shows the sheer complexity of the environment.
It's incredibly meticulous. It lists minerals, stone, cave, wood, valley, desert, oasis, hill, pond, lake, stream, river, mountain, sea, ocean, and even the seabed.
It feels like they're trying to say we haven't missed a single thing.
I think that's the point. The inclusion of every natural geological feature emphasizes that this modern map of reality isn't just about abstract laws. It's about cataloging every single tangible feature of the stage we live on. It's an assertion that every detail has been accounted for.
And we spend so much time thinking about the ground beneath our feet, the planet, that it's easy to forget the complexity of what's happening just above the surface.
Which is why the atmospheric elements come next. You have wolfing clouds, the atmosphere itself, then weather, and climate.
And the sources are careful to distinguish those last two.
Very. They distinguish between the short-term state, the weather, and the long-term patterns, the klima. It shows an understanding of dynamic, complex systems over time. And all this complexity, this entire biosphere and atmosphere, rests upon the largest geological feature, the continent.
You know, any observer just looking at this catalog, from a single Planck length to an entire planet's climate system, would find this accounting of the material world to be just overwhelmingly impressive. We've mapped the Earth and everything on it.
Anyone would.
Yeah.
But the list has to keep going, right?
Yeah.
Because the Earth itself is contained within a much larger physical system. So points 40 through 49 launch us out into the cosmic scale.
Right, we're stepping off the continent now. We encounter the planet, moons, asteroids, and the source of our energy, stars.
And then we just keep climbing that cosmic ladder. The solar system, the galaxy, stellar black holes, then galaxy clusters and superclusters.
And then finally, the biggest thing we know, the universe. The total observable universe. That is the known physical boundary.
It is. And yet even here, the list pushes against that boundary. It includes the theoretical edges of the modern map. Point 49 is the event horizon.
The boundary of a black hole. The point of no return.
The theoretical limit beyond which our physical laws, as we currently understand them, they completely break down.
And then the final point on this entire materialist map, point 50, seems to acknowledge that even modern thought has to contend with concepts that stretch beyond our three dimensions.
That's the inclusion of parallel dimensions. By putting that in, the source material is showing that modern reality, even at its most speculative, kind of concedes that existence probably extends beyond our simple four-dimensional space-time bubble.
Incredible. So we've mapped the entire physical and cosmic reality from the smallest measurable particle all the way to the furthest theoretical dimension. But there's a piece we skipped. Stemming back from that individual organism at point 14, the sources detail a crucial social bifurcation.
Yes, the complexity of human organization. This is the other half of the map. If an individual is the product of biology, then how individuals organize themselves is the core of what we call civilization.
And this sociological map is laid out very sequentially, too.
It is. It starts with the smallest relational unit,
Right.
marriage. Then it expands to family, then gross family, the extended family, clan, sippe, which is a kind of kinship group, stam, the tribe, and then volk, a people or a nation.
This literally tracks the growth of human identity from a single pair all the way up to a national identity. And it culminates in the largest social structure mentioned.
The Ummah, which represents the global community, the collective body of humanity.
So the sources are saying that reality isn't just physical laws and elements. It's also the very structure of human interaction, allegiance, and identity.
Exactly. And beyond those structures, you have the abstract concepts that make them all function. These listed as the pillars of civilization.
Things like our belief system, our economic frameworks.
Precisely. The list includes Glaub, faith, Handel, trade, handwork, craft, then ideology, Lebensweise, ideology or a way of life, politics, and finally, Kunst, art.
These are the non-material organizing principles that guide the whole massive, complex system of human interaction that we built up from single individuals.
That's the idea.
Okay, so to sum this all up, modern reality, as mapped by our sources, is defined by this staggering 50-point list. Physics, chemistry, biology, geology, astronomy, sociology, art, politics, everything quantifiable, and everything that emerges from the quantifiable. It's a breathtaking map of existence.
It is a truly impressive enumeration reflecting millennia of human inquiry and discovery. But this is the big but. This brings us right back to the central challenge from the sources.
Right.
They demand that we acknowledge this vast 50-point reality, that we appreciate its complexity, only to then assert that this is all only a tiny part of reality.
And that one sentence is the transition.
It's the transition to the cosmological framework that exists entirely outside of these known boundaries, a reality defined not by matter, but by transition.
It's staggering to think that this whole massive physical structure is just the stage. And here's where it gets really interesting for me. What if our life and death are just kinds of life and death?
That's the core of it. This cosmological framework fundamentally redefines what we think of as our beginning and our end.
The philosophical leap here is huge. It's this concept of Überführung, a transfer or a transition.
The sources state that physical death, what they call Abelbin, is not the cessation of existence. It's not the end. It is simply a transfer into another life, a new state of being.
Which immediately moves existence from being a single linear event
into a sequence of distinct interconnected states.
And the central paradigm-shifting claim is that this worldly existence, the life we're in right now called dunya, is merely the third of 5 sequential lives.
Think about that. The third. That implies there are 2 forms of pre-existence that we've already been through and 2 forms of post-existence still to come.
Okay, let's detail these 5 lives. We need to go through them chronologically to understand how they structure this ultimate reality. So, life number 1.
Life number 1 is Alam al-Ar-Ruh, the world of pre-existence. This is the initial state of the soul.
Before any physical body.
Long before. The soul is created here before any form of physical embodiment. And this life is defined by a single conscious act of affirmation, the covenant. It's sometimes called alastu by rabbicum.
Which is an oath?
It's an oath taken in a purely spiritual state. Before this world, the dunya, even came into being. This is the moment of original commitment, the foundational act of the soul.
So we all start with a conscious act that dictates our foundational nature. An act that's then stored away, maybe subconsciously, for the rest of our journey.
That's a good way to think about it. It sets the baseline. Which brings us to life number 2, Im Thron, or on the throne. And this is fascinatingly specific about the nature of reality outside of our world.
And the source material gives us a very specific, almost unsettling detail about this state.
It does. It explicitly notes that this location, I'm thrown, is where our grandchildren currently are.
That challenges our modern linear understanding of time, of biological succession.
Completely. It implies a direct current state of pre-existence for souls that are awaiting their incarnation into the physical world, into life 3. They are waiting right now in a specific non-material location.
Which brings us to life number 3, the one we're in, dunya, the here and now. This is the world of physical embodiment, the world that contains all 50 points of that measurable reality we just spent so long mapping out.
This is the temporary stage, the testing ground.
Then comes life number 4, which begins after physical death.
Barzakh. It's described as the intermediate life. It is the period between our physical death and the final resurrection. And crucially, it is not non-existence. It is a transitionary but conscious state of being.
And finally, life number 5, Akira.
The life in the hereafter, eternal life. This is the final, permanent destination that follows the judgment.
So if we connect all this back to the big picture, the entire physical universe with its quarks and superclusters and all 50 points of reality is contained entirely within life 3, within dunya.
The whole thing, everything we study, everything we build, is merely the temporary backdrop for the soul's journey through just one of 5 distinct sequential phases. The vastness of the modern world is just completely dwarfed by the sheer temporal scope of this cosmology.
That sets up our next major dive perfectly. I mean, it's just staggering that the entire universe is just life 3. But the sources, they give us an even more granular map than that, right? The 9-stage journey of the soul itself.
Yes.
So how does that map overlay onto these 5 lives, and what does it tell us about the nature of the soul?
The 9 stages, or stadion, they provide the deep chronological dive into the soul's epic existence. They explain the complexity of spiritual reality, and they highlight the really crucial moments of connection and disconnection with the physical body.
Okay, so stage 1 brings us right back to life 1. Alam ul-Arwah, the world of pre-existence. How is the soul defined when it's first created?
The soul is created in this state, before any material tether, and importantly, it is created with the fitra. This is maybe the most critical internal concept in the whole framework.
The fitra, what does that mean?
It's defined as the divine blueprint, the innate disposition. It determines the soul's unique characteristics, its potential for good. It's like the foundational software that the soul is running. And this is also the stage where that conscious covenant, that initial oath, takes place.
So the soul isn't a blank slate. It comes pre-programmed with potential and disposition. But that kind of challenges the idea of free will, doesn't it? If the blueprint is divine, how much room is there for actual choice?
That's a really important question. And the source material seems to imply that the fitra provides the potential and the default setting, which is oriented toward goodness and truth. But the subsequent lives, especially dunya, are the testing rooms where the soul's free will has to interact with that blueprint.
So it's the difference between having a map and actually choosing which road to follow on that map.
That is a perfect analogy, exactly.
Okay, so that brings us to stage 2, ungeboren or unborn. And this corresponds directly to life 2, I'm thrawn, the holding pattern.
Yes, the souls are located in Thrawn, and the source material speculates on their state. It asks, are they sleeping? It represents this period of latency before they are incarnated. They are conscious entities, but they're temporarily inactive in terms of any physical interaction.
And stage 3 is a very rapid transition. The mother's womb, the Gebärmutter, this is the first critical physical connection.
And this is a point of profound detail in the sources. The soul and the body, they become verbunden connected at a specific time, starting after 4 months of gestation. But here's the major insight. The soul already possesses properties, knowledge, and experiences when it enters the womb. This isn't the beginning of the soul's learning. This marks a period of spiritual growth that happens in utero.
That is a fascinating detail. It suggests that the spiritual entity arriving in the physical world is already developed. It's absorbed something from its first 2 lives. It completely challenges the idea that life and learning start at birth.
It suggests the process of existence is additive across the lives. You move from potential to experience. And this leads us directly to stage 4, dunya, the world of this life. This is life 3, the focus of all those 50 points of reality we mapped out earlier.
And dunya is the test, the Prüfungsraum.
The testing room, exactly. It's explicitly defined as a place where the embodied soul has to face temptations and challenges, material desires, ideological conflicts, physical hardships. This is the stage of consequence. This is the arena for free will.
And what is it that determines the final consequence? What's being judged?
The source material is emphatic about this. Accountability hinges on the close set of your words and your actions, but most critically, their intentions. The motive behind the action. The motive is everything. The action itself is secondary to the purity or the corruption of the motive behind it. And it's these intentions that determine the soul's eternal fate in the Akhira. The whole composite entity, the soul or Nafs, the mind or Aql, the heart, and the body, is held accountable for the synergy of its motives and its deeds.
So you could have two people perform the exact same action, let's say giving charity, but one is rewarded eternally and the other isn't, based entirely on the underlying intention. One did it for praise, the other did it for God.
Precisely. And this shifts the entire focus of the test from just observable behavior to internal morality. It makes dunya a profoundly internal struggle, even though it's taking place on this vast physical stage.
Stage 5 is a temporary state, one we all experience daily. Der Schlaftraum, sleep and dreams, a kind of preview of the separation to come.
Yes. During sleep, the soul partially leaves the body. But the source's state, it remains connected by a fade in a thread. It's a temporary disconnection. The soul is still anchored, it's capable of returning, but it hints at the mechanism of total separation.
Which is stage 6, the moment of definitive transition. Der Tod, death, the snapping of that thread.
This is the transition stage. The soul and the body become getrennt, separated for a certain period of time. And this separation marks the end of the test. It's the end of life 3 and the irreversible entry into life 4.
Which is stage 7, al-Barzakh, the intermediate life, separation from the body.
This is the 4th life. It's a state of full separation from the physical body, yet the soul remains fully conscious. And accountability here is immediate.
Immediate, not at the end of time.
Immediate. The soul begins to experience preliminary rewards or consequences based directly on the intentions and deeds from dunya. It's an active state of existence, a waiting period leading up to the end of time, but it is not a neutral or unconscious wait.
That is conceptually very different from just a simple soul sleep or a final judgment that only happens at the very end of time.
It certainly is. It emphasizes that reality is not paused between death and resurrection. The spiritual consequences of our actions start manifesting right away in Barzakh, even though the ultimate eternal consequences are still to come.
And how long does this intermediate life last?
It lasts until Jamul al-Akhirat, the Day of Judgment. The sources give us several really powerful, specific names for this event to underline its cosmic scale. It's called Al-Qariya, the striking calamity, Al-Ghashiyah, the overwhelming event, and Asa, the hour.
And the transition into that Day of Judgment is marked by specific, earth-shattering cosmological events. You mentioned the blasts of a trumpet, the Sur.
Yes. This sequence is profound. The first blow in the Sur causes everything in existence to cease. And when we say everything, we mean the total destruction of all creation. The cosmos, our 50 points of reality, the heavens, the Barzakh itself.
Everything just stops.
Everything. The source says this leaves only the divine presence, except for what he wishes to stay. It's a momentary universal pause where time and space, as we understand them, completely dissolve.
A complete cosmic reboot. The ultimate cessation of all measurable and transitional reality. It's really hard to wrap your mind around that level of universal emptiness.
It's the maximal expression of that core premise, God is greater. The idea that the entire universe is contingent and can be wiped away in an instant. And then following this period of cessation, the second blow of the Sur initiates the next stage.
Stage 8, Yawm al-Qiyamah, the Day of Judgment. And this is the second critical connection for the soul, and this one is permanent.
It is the resurrection, the reunion with the body. And unlike the temporary connection in the womb, this is described as none of ewiger now on forever. This reunion is required because the entire composite entity, the soul, mind, and body, was accountable for the actions in dunya. The body that participated in the test must also participate in the consequence.
And this permanent reunion then leads to the final, ultimate judgment, based once more on the underlying intention of the words and actions.
Yes, the final reckoning.
Yes.
Which leads to stage 9, the final state. Al-Akhira, the eternal life. This is life 5. This is the permanent existence that follows the Day of Judgment. The completion of the soul's 9-stage journey, which has spanned all 5 distinct lives.
So we've mapped the physical stage with the 50 points, and the soul's journey through 9 stages and 5 lives. Now we have to ask, what else fills this vaster non-material reality? We need to look at the cosmological structures and beings that facilitate this whole massive framework.
Absolutely. The sources move beyond human and material existence to list specific creations that structure this reality. And they start not with an atom or a quark, but with a foundational cosmological tool that precedes all physical being.
The qualum, the pen, or das Cerebro.
And it is explicitly noted as the first creation. The implication is profound. The act of recording, or of divine decree, preceded the creation of time, space, and matter. It suggests that the history and destiny of the universe were inscribed before the universe itself was fully realized.
And after that?
Following this, we have the sur, the trumpet, which we just discussed as the instrument tied to that great transition between Barzakh and Judgment Day.
And then, of course, the two ultimate destinations that frame the consequence of dunya.
Jannah, paradise, and Jahannam, hell. These are eternal places defined by reward or punishment. And the sources also detail the sheer scale of the divine seat, the kursi, the footstool, and the arsh, the throne.
These aren't just symbolic seats, are they?
Not at all. They're described as massive cosmological structures that dwarf the entire universe. The kursi is often described conceptually as encompassing all of the heavens and the earth, while the arsh, the throne, is above even that. It represents the center of divine authority, and it sets the scale of reality far, far beyond the 50 points we mapped.
The scale is almost terrifyingly huge. And beyond places and instruments, this reality is populated by other beings, right? Beings that help manage this cosmological machine.
Yes, specifically angels, who are noted as a separate creation. They're defined by their obedience and their specific, often monumental, functions. But there's another, highly detailed creation mentioned. The jinn, a creation from smokeless fire.
And the detail provided about the jinn is what is truly surprising, especially given how they're often depicted in popular culture as just one thing.
That's what's so fascinating. The source material notes that jinn are entities with free will. And because of that, they follow diverse belief systems. Jews, Christians, Muslims, atheists, just like humans do.
So they exist in this greater reality alongside us.
Yes, inhabiting life 3, the dunya, but generally unperceived by us. It adds a whole other layer of conscious, free-willed life to the world.
Are there any other entities that play a role in this system?
A few others are mentioned that signal the depth of the cosmological narrative. Gog and Magog, who are eschatological figures. The clothes, which Iblis is said to have taken from Adam and Eve, symbolizing a loss of innate protection. And a critical generic category, other created things, unknown.
And that admission is vital.
It is, because it respects that God is greater premise. It says the map is still incomplete, reflecting infinite possibility.
Let's turn back for a moment to the spiritual forces that interact with us directly, like Sur or magic. How does that sit in?
In this cosmological framework, Sur gets a very specific definition. It separates it from, say, modern psychological trickery or illusion. It is explicitly described as illusions created by shayateen, by devils.
Devils.
And crucially, the sources say these can be the devils of both men and jinn. This defines magic not as some natural phenomenon or a superpower, but as a deceptive spiritual force, a temptation that leverages the illusory nature of the dunya.
Finally, we have to turn inward again. Even within the individual, there are these non-material components that operate the self, separate from the material body. These are the tools of the test.
Yes, these inner creations are vital to understanding the accountability we talked about in stage 4. You have the Nafs, which is the self or the ego, the driving force of desires and identity.
And the Ruh?
The Ruh, the spirit of the soul, the eternal essence. Then Aqwal, which is reason, the tool for cognitive deliberation. And finally, the Fitra, that divine blueprint or innate disposition we started with.
So if we look at this entire system, this whole grand structure, it means the physical universe, all those 50 points, is merely the temporary stage. It's where the non-material self, the combination of Nafs, Ruh, Aqwal, and Fitra, undergoes a critical test.
That test being dunya, life 3.
In preparation for its eternal destination, the Akhirah, life 5.
That is the perfect synthesis of it all. The sheer scope of reality that operates beyond our immediate physical perception completely dwarfs the totality of matter and energy that modern science even attempts to map. Those 50 points of modern reality, as massive and impressive as they are all contained within a single temporary transitional stage.
So the true reality isn't defined by its physical size,
but by its spiritual continuity.
So what does this all mean then, at the end of the day? It means understanding that our current physical body is simply one temporary connection point in a much grander 9-stage, 5-life journey. It fundamentally shifts the entire metric of success, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The central lesson from the dunya stage from life 3 isn't about achieving cosmic scale, mapping the furthest galaxy cluster or maximizing material wealth. It is about focusing on the close set of your words and your actions.
And what defines them most critically?
The intention behind them.
The ultimate reality isn't the size of the cosmos, but the quality of the intent that guides our actions inside this temporary testing room.
Yes. The material world is merely the arena where the non-material self is tested, judged, and ultimately prepared for its eternal state. This cosmological framework demands a total inversion of modern priorities, where internal purity and intention outweigh external action and material achievement.
You know, this entire discussion began with that profound idea that the soul possesses knowledge and experience before birth. It enters the physical world in the womb, stage 3, after 4 months, and it's already preloaded with its fitra, that divine blueprint.
And with the memory of the covenant from Alam al-Arwa, Life 1.
That original blueprint is the guide. It's the starting point of the test.
It is.
So here's the final thought for you to take away. If our soul enters the physical world preloaded with this knowledge and potential, and it's guided by a fundamental innate disposition toward truth, how might the awareness of these previous lives, even if that awareness is subconscious, fundamentally change the way we approach the challenges and temptations of dunya? If we are truly designed for a specific conscious purpose, does acknowledging that fitra make the choices of the testing room less overwhelming, maybe even clearer? It's a profound question to mull over as you begin to contemplate the reality that stretches far, far beyond the event horizon.